Welcome to Community Roundup, powered by Brad's Furniture and Appliances. This is the program we look at nonprofits, charitable organizations, and sports clubs that makes Fort St. John and area such a remarkable and wonderful place to live. My name is Ed Hitchens. As always, I am your host, and today we're at the North Peace Museum, and we're joined by the executive director, Heather Sjoblom. Heather, how you doing today? Nice to see you.
Good.
All right. Well, I do appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. We all know about history is about telling a story. It's about artifacts. It's about just historical places and dates. But this particular museum, I'm not sure about the story. I don't think anybody. I'm not sure people out there know the whole story about this museum. So tell us about the history of the museum within the region of Fort St. John and area. Let's go into that a little bit.
Sure. So in 1963, there was a group of people in this area who thought we should really do something to preserve our history. And so they formed the North Peace Historical Society, and they were registered as a formal society in 1965. And they started collecting artifacts, stories, documents from this area because they realized that some of the early settlers and fur trade records, indigenous records, and so on, really needed a place where they could all be collected. And so for years they worked to collect. They did small exhibits like at the curling club, and eventually they saved up enough money to build what was known as, or to move what was known as the H building from Central Elementary School, and before that it had been used at like on the Alaska Highway, and they moved that to Peace Island Park, and that became the first museum. So it's called the Peace Island Park Museum, and that opened in the 60s, and it continued to serve this area in the 70s, but they realized they needed to be able to expand and maybe have a museum in Fort St. John. They did a few trials in the early 80s. There was an Alaska Highway Museum in 1982 for the 40th anniversary of the construction of the Alaska Highway, and it was at Art Space, so like where Whole Wheat and Honey is now. And that was super successful. So in the late 70s, early 80s, they saved up enough money, and surprisingly, in the midst of a huge oil bust, they managed to build the museum in our current location.
Okay, so
here.
that was the current building we're sitting in right now.
And
okay.
It opened in February 1984. So we celebrated our 40th anniversary within this building last year. And even as soon as it opened, they realized, well, hey, we still need more space. Every museum always needs more space, right? But they started saving up. And it took them years, really decades, to save up until about 2009 when we put on the expansion over here, which increased our display space and gave us a much bigger kind of collection storage area and receiving room for building and accepting exhibits and so on.
Okay, so you touched on it just earlier, the building of Fort St. John and the growth of the town was really based on the growth of the Alaska Highway. So what types of exhibits are within the current location here?
We have a whole bunch of exhibits starting with dinosaurs into the first people in this area with Sequatch or Lake Cave, and indigenous history, into the fur trade, and then into settlement. Some of our exhibits go up to the present day pretty much, such as our medical exhibit or our aviation exhibit. And then we have exhibits on transportation, like trails and so on, like the Fort Nelson Trail, and the sleigh is behind me here. And we've got exhibits on the Alaska Highway. We talk about our industries, so farming and agriculture, oil and gas. And then we talk about things like schools. Sometimes we build an exhibit around a particular artifact, like our 1923 Dodge Brothers Roadster car or sleigh and so on.
Okay, all right. Is it something that is very vital to like being educated about the history of this area, to come here and just enjoy everything that's
Yeah,
within here?
if you come here, this should be a place where you are able to connect to the community and in some way. We try and share some personal stories. We've got a brand new exhibit that's complete, but we haven't got the signs yet, so they'll be installed hopefully later this month. And we're trying to include more of our community's diversity. So this one deals with a whole bunch of multicultural residents who really contributed to Fort St. John's history. We've got Mohammed Slimane, who was an early Muslim storekeeper. We've got Queenie and George Yip and Mark Waugh, who were early Chinese restaurateurs. And we've got some Filipino ladies, Mama Tess, who was a nurse, and Lily Pagdalao, who was the first Filipino Miss Canada and Miss Fort St. John.
Okay.
So they've got some really cool stories. We're hoping that more and more people will see themselves and their culture in the museum.
Do you have a timetable as when that exhibit will open?
As soon as the signs are printed, and well, they're being printed right now once they're delivered, so hopefully the end of this month, but you can watch for an announcement on our website and our Facebook page.
Okay, and you touched on it when I came in here. You talked about the presence of volunteers within the museum, excuse me, and it's it's essential to be moving, to be having volunteers within here. So how many volunteers do you usually have? How do people go about becoming a volunteer if they're interested?
Sure. So we're just tabulating our final volunteer numbers and hours for the last year because we try and record all of that. But we usually have somewhere kind of between 60 and 90-ish volunteers, but it could mean like you make something for a Christmas tea, like a baked good, and that's your volunteer hour. Or we have volunteers who come in several times a week or once a week or so on. They watch the gift shop, or we have people work with our archives or our collection, or help put on events or do some of our fundraisers. So anyone can really become a volunteer. All you have to do is drop by the museum or give us a call or send me an email, and we can set up a time to chat and talk about what interests you and kind of what kind of schedule, or do you want to just come in once or twice and that kind of
Okay, so it fluctuates depending on who the person is, basically.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So you touched on all the different aspects of the history of this region that are within the museum. Tell us a little bit more about some events that are coming up in the wintertime as we go towards
Yeah.
spring, and how 2025 is going to go.
Okay, so last year we set a record for events. We did well over 45 events. So this year we just had one last Saturday with their spinners and weavers. They came in and celebrated St. Distaff's Day, which is the end of the holiday, Christmas, 12 days of Christmas, and the start of, or the return of women to work, like spinning.
Okay.
We traditionally do
So
this
how was that
every year.
event? How did that go?
It was a small attendance, but still lots of fun for those who came. And then at the end of this month, we have January 31st, February 1st. We are doing, in partnership with the Fort St. John Literacy Society, we're doing a then and now scavenger hunt and free admission. So it's best done as like a family group, but can be done really by anybody. And it just has people finding certain things or learning certain stories throughout the museum, and then talking about how, say, transportation, that's one of the pages, compares then to today, and so on. So it's kind of a conversation starter and gets you thinking about how different things can be, or maybe in some cases they're still quite similar. And then early in February, I think Tuesday the 6th or so, we are doing a Métis handicraft class with Métis elder Linda Van Weerigan, and she is going to teach moose hair tufting. So that one has limited registration and there is a fee for it. And then on the Family Day weekend, we are once again doing our family day scavenger hunts to go with High on Ice. So this year they're going to be winter sports themed scavenger hunts. So you'll learn facts and find winter sports artifacts throughout the museum. And so that they'll be kind of free admission the Friday, Saturday, and Monday afternoon of the Family Day weekend, and that'll tie in on High on Ice. And the plan is to also host a small little exhibit that the city or so on is putting together about the history of the High on Ice Festival.
Okay, that all sounds awesome. Um, my next question, I have to ask, in the dawn of the internet, and there's so much information at people's fingertips, how critically vital is it to have museums such as this?
Uh, well, honestly, like for this area, there's not that much information out there online, and we are trying to get more and more online. We have a lot of school history on our website for free, for example, and we have a huge following, particularly on our Facebook page. So it's a great way for people to kind of share their knowledge. Yesterday, I just posted a picture of a butter churn and told the story behind it of the two Hadlin boys, Arthur and Dale, who would turn this butter churn for their mother, and was comparing it to my son and liking to help out with chores that it seemed to be fun, at least at the beginning. And then they kind of get tiring and the novelty wears off. But we had lots of people sharing their memories of what it was like just to make butter in a whole bunch of different ways and so on. So it's a great way to kind of connect, create community, even if it's online community, and to share our history and to even collect that history because it's recorded through the Facebook page, about what people remember about that kind of artifact or that place in a photograph we shared and so on.
Okay, so once again, before I let you go, tell us, how do you go about volunteering? Where can people go to find more information about the North Peace Museum?
Okay, so you can volunteer by contacting the museum. You can drop by. You can phone us 250-787-0430. You can email fsjnpmuseum@fsjmail.com. You can find all that contact information on our website, www.fsjmuseum.com, or you can also follow us on Facebook or Instagram.
Okay, all right. So questions I have. Heather, once again, thank you very much for the
Thank
time.
you.
This has been Ed Hitchens for Energeticcity.ca for the Community Roundup. And once again, the Community Roundup is brought to you by Brad's Furniture and Appliances. And if you like what you see and you want some more content, click that like and subscribe button. We'll see you next time.